Imagine rushing to a hospital with your sick sibling, desperate for help, only to be told to wait in the corner while others are treated first, not because of medical priority, but because someone decided you didn't belong there to young siblings. A racist nurse and a wealthy patient's mother who thinks money buys everything. Until one phone call to the right person exposes a shocking truth that changes everything, secrets are revealed, power shifts, and justice strikes harder than anyone could imagine. This isn't just a story about healthcare. It's about the hidden hierarchies that can make or break lives. Stay tuned, because what happens next will restore your faith in karma and leave you absolutely speechless. Maya Rodriguez, a brilliant 22-year-old pre-med student, was frantically checking her younger brother's pulse as they sat in the cramped waiting room of St. Matthew's Private Medical Center in downtown Chicago. The October rain drummed against the large windows while the sterile smell of disinfectant filled the air. Around them, Maya had always been the responsible one, the one who took charge when their parents were working double shifts to keep the family afloat. Her 19-year-old brother, Diego, clutched his side in obvious pain. His face pale and sweating despite the cool temperature of the hospital, Diego had been complaining of severe abdominal pain for the past 6 hours, and Maya's medical training immediately raised red flags about possible appendicitis or worse. She had driven through the stormy night to bring him to St. Matthew's, one of the city's most prestigious private hospitals. Because their insurance barely covered the basic community clinic and Diego needed the best care possible, Maya had saved money from her part-time job tutoring other students to afford the emergency visit. Faith's siblings sat in the plush waiting room, surrounded by oil paintings and mahogany furniture that screamed expensive health care. Maya observed the other patients and families around them, noting how the staff seemed to prioritize certain people over others. She watched as a well-dressed elderly man was immediately escorted to a private room, despite arriving after them, while a young mother with her crying baby was told there would be a delay. Maya approached the reception desk again, her voice steady but urgent. "Excuse me. My brother has been waiting for over 2 hours and his pain is getting worse. Could someone please examine him?" The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and cold blue eyes, barely looked up from her computer screen. "As I told you before, we're very busy tonight. You'll have to wait your turn like everyone else, but this could be his appendix," Maya insisted, keeping her voice professional despite her growing frustration in medical emergencies. "Time is critical." The receptionist finally looked up, her gaze scanning Maya and Diego with obvious disdain. "Are you a doctor, miss?" she asked with a condescending tone. Maya straightened her shoulders. "I'm a pre-med student at Northwestern, and I know enough to recognize when someone needs immediate attention." The receptionist let out a small laugh. "Pre-med student, well, that doesn't make you qualified to diagnose anyone, does it? You'll wait your turn." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as other patients in the waiting room turned to stare. She returned to Diego's side, her hands shaking with a mixture of anger and worry. Diego squeezed her hand weakly. "Maya, I think I'm going to be sick," he whispered. Then the automatic doors burst open, and a woman in her 50s stormed in, wearing a designer coat and clutching a Louis Vuitton purse. She was followed by a man in an expensive suit who appeared to be having difficulty breathing. The woman immediately marched to the reception desk, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. "My husband needs to see a cardiologist immediately," she announced in a voice that commanded attention. Were members of the Platinum Care program, the same receptionist who had dismissed. Maya jumped to her feet with a bright smile. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore. Dr. Harrison will see your husband right away. Please follow me to VIP Suite 3. Maya watched in disbelief as the couple was escorted past the crowded waiting room and through a set of double doors marked "Private Patients Only." Maya stood up again, her patience finally exhausted. "Excuse me, but my brother was here first and he's in severe pain. How is it that someone who just arrived gets seen immediately while we've been waiting for hours?" Mrs. Whitmore turned around, her perfectly made-up face twisted with annoyance. "Because, young lady, we pay for premium service, unlike some people who probably can't even afford to be here." The receptionist nodded in agreement. "Mrs. Whitmore is absolutely right. Our Platinum members receive priority care. That's how private healthcare works if you can't afford our services. Perhaps you should try the county hospital. Diego doubled over in pain at that moment. A small moan escaping his lips, Maya knelt beside him. "Checking his pulse and noting how rapid it had become, please," Maya said, her voice breaking slightly. "Something is seriously wrong with my brother. He needs help now." Mrs. Whitmore looked down at them with disgust. "Maybe you should have thought about that. Before coming to a hospital, you can't afford security, should escort these people out before. They cause more of a scene." A security guard approached them, his hand resting on his radio. "Folks, I'm going to have to ask you to either pay the deposit or find another facility." Maya's eyes filled with tears of frustration. "We can pay the emergency fee. I have the money right here." She pulled out an envelope containing $800 in cash that she had been saving for months. Mrs. Whitmore scoffed. $800 that won't even cover the consultation fee at a real hospital like this. She turned to the receptionist, Janet. "Surely there are protocols for dealing with people who don't belong here," the receptionist named Janet nodded vigorously. "Absolutely, Mrs. Whitmore. We maintain certain standards." Maya felt her world spinning as she realized they were about to be kicked out of the hospital while Diego's condition was clearly deteriorating. She had never felt so helpless in her life. All her dreams of becoming a doctor, all her studying and hard work meant nothing in the face of prejudice and classism. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and scrolled to her father's contact. Miguel Rodriguez was currently in a board meeting at the hospital's main administrative building. But Maya didn't know that he was not just any doctor. He was the chief of surgery and one of the founding board members of St. Matthew's Medical Center, a fact he had kept private from his children to ensure they developed their own sense of worth and determination. Miguel had worked his way up from a poor immigrant family to become one of the most respected surgeons in the country. Maya typed a desperate text message. "Dad, we're at St. Matthew's emergency room with Diego. They won't treat him and are trying to make us leave. Diego is in severe pain, and I think it might be appendicitis. Please help us. They're treating us terribly because they think we don't belong here." She hit send and prayed her father would see it soon. Meanwhile, in the administrative boardroom, on the 15th floor, Dr. Rodriguez was reviewing quarterly patient satisfaction reports. When his phone buzzed, he glanced at the message, and his face immediately darkened with concern and anger. He stood up abruptly. "Interrupting the meeting, I need to go to the emergency department immediately. There's a situation involving my children." The other board members looked confused as Dr. Rodriguez stormed out of the room and headed straight for the elevator. His mind raced with worry about Diego's condition and fury at how his children were apparently being treated in his own hospital. He pulled out his phone and called the head of emergency services, Dr. Sarah Chen. "Sarah, this is Miguel. I need you to go to the ER immediately and find my children, Maya and Diego. Rodriguez, they should be in the waiting area. And I understand there's been some kind of problem with their treatment." Dr. Chen was shocked to hear the urgency in her colleague's voice. "Of course, Dr. Rodriguez, I'll head down there right now." Back in the emergency room, Diego's condition had worsened significantly. He was now doubled over in pain and had begun vomiting. Maya was beside herself with worry, while Janet, the receptionist, continued to insist they needed to leave. Mrs. Whitmore stood nearby with her arms crossed, clearly enjoying the drama unfolding before her. "This is exactly what's wrong with healthcare today," Mrs. Whitmore announced to anyone who would listen. People who can't afford proper medical care thinking they deserve the same treatment as paying customers. It's ridiculous. Maya tried to ignore her comments while focusing on Diego's deteriorating condition. The double doors to the treatment area burst open, and Dr. Chen emerged, looking around the waiting room. Frantically, her eyes landed on Maya and Diego, and she hurried over to them. "Are you Maya and Diego Rodriguez?" she asked urgently. Maya looked up with surprise and hope. "Yes, that's us." Dr. Chen immediately knelt down to examine Diego, checking his pulse and feeling his abdomen. "How long has he been experiencing this pain?" she asked Maya, while professionally assessing Diego's condition. "About 6 hours. It's been getting worse. The pain is localized to his lower right side, and he's been vomiting. We need to get him into an examination room immediately," Dr. Chen announced. Signaling for a wheelchair, Janet, the receptionist, looked confused and slightly panicked. "But Dr. Chen, they haven't completed the payment process," Mrs. Whitmore was just explaining. That Dr. Chen turned to face Janet with a stern expression. Mrs. Rodriguez and her brother will receive immediate treatment. End of discussion. She helped Diego into the wheelchair while Maya gathered their belongings. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, her face red with indignation. Excuse me, but this is highly irregular. My husband has been waiting in the VIP suite and deserves priority treatment. We pay premium fees for a reason, Dr. Chen barely glanced at Mrs. Whitmore. Medical emergencies take priority over convenience, ma'am. Your husband's condition is stable. This young man needs immediate attention as they wheeled Diego toward the treatment area. Maya heard Mrs. Whitmore's voice rising behind them. This is unacceptable. I'm calling my lawyer and the hospital administration. Someone will hear about this outrageous treatment of Platinum members. Janet was frantically trying to calm Mrs. Whitmore. While obviously confused about the sudden change in protocol, Dr. Chen brought Diego into examination room 3 and immediately began a thorough assessment. Maya, your instincts were correct. This does appear to be acute appendicitis. We need to prep him for emergency surgery.
Oh.
Maya felt a mixture of relief and terror. Is he going to be okay? Absolutely. But we caught it just in time. Dr. Chen assured her your quick thinking and medical knowledge probably saved his life if this had progressed to a rupture. It could have been much more serious. She immediately called for the surgical team while Maya held Diego's hand at that moment. The examination room door opened and Dr. Miguel Rodriguez entered. Still wearing his suit from the board meeting, Maya looked up in surprise. Dad, what are you doing here? How did you know we were here? Dr. Rodriguez embraced his daughter tightly. I got your text, sweetheart. I came as soon as I could, Diego managed. A weak smile despite his pain. Dad, Maya probably saved my life. She knew something was really wrong and brought me here even though they tried to make us leave. Dr. Rodriguez's expression darkened as he looked at his son's condition, and then, back at Maya. They tried to make you leave. Maya nodded. Tears finally spilling over, the receptionist said, we didn't belong here. Couldn't afford treatment. A woman named Mrs. Whitmore said security should escort us out. They treated us like we were nothing. Dad, like we were beneath them. Dr. Rodriguez's jaw tightened with controlled fury. Dr. Chen, please ensure Diego receives the absolute best surgical care available. I need to address some issues with our staff. Dr. Chen nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Of course, Dr. Rodriguez. He'll be in surgery within the hour. Dr. Rodriguez kissed Diego's forehead. You're going to be fine, son. Maya did exactly the right thing bringing you here. He turned to Maya. I'm proud of you for advocating for your brother, and I'm sorry you had to experience such treatment in this hospital. As the surgical team prepared Diego for his operation, Dr. Rodriguez made his way back to the waiting room. His mind was focused on the inexcusable treatment his children had received. He found Janet still at the reception desk, trying to manage the chaos Mrs. Whitmore had created. Janet, I need to speak with you privately, Dr. Rodriguez said in a calm but authoritative voice. Janet looked up nervously. I'm sorry, sir, but visiting hours are almost over and I'm dealing with a very upset Platinum member. I'm Dr. Miguel Rodriguez, chief of surgery and board member of this hospital, he announced quietly. Janet's face went completely pale as the realization hit her. Mrs. Whitmore, who had been ranting nearby, suddenly stopped mid-sentence and turned to stare at Dr. Rodriguez. You're Dr. Rodriguez, Janet stammered, but your children. They said their name was Rodriguez, but I didn't think. Dr. Rodriguez's expression remained stern. You didn't think what, Janet, that Rodriguez is a common name, that people with my last name could possibly be related to me? Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, her earlier confidence now replaced with nervous uncertainty. Dr. Rodriguez, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Your children were taking up valuable resources and… Dr. Rodriguez held up his hand to silence her. Mrs. Whitmore, let me be very clear about what happened here tonight. My son came to this emergency room with acute appendicitis, potentially life-threatening condition. My daughter, a pre-med student, correctly identified the severity of his symptoms, yet your staff made them wait for over 2 hours while prioritizing less urgent cases based solely on perceived economic status. Janet tried to interject. Dr. Rodriguez, we follow standard protocols for premium members. Dr. Rodriguez's voice remained calm but carried an unmistakable edge of authority. Medical emergencies do not have economic classifications. Janet, a person's life is not worth less because they don't carry a Platinum membership card. Mrs. Whitmore's face was now flushed with embarrassment and anger. This is ridiculous, my husband pays. It's significant fees to this hospital. We deserve priority treatment for our loyalty. Dr. Rodriguez turned to face her directly. Mrs. Whitmore, your husband's mild chest discomfort was assessed by our cardiologist and determined to be acid reflux meanwhile. My son could have died from a ruptured appendix while waiting in your hierarchy of worthiness. The waiting room had grown quiet as other patients and families listened to the confrontation unfolding. Dr. Rodriguez continued furthermore. Mrs. Whitmore, your suggestion that security should remove my children from this hospital will be formally documented and reviewed by our ethics committee. Janet was now visibly shaking Dr. Rodriguez. I sincerely apologize. I had no idea they were your children. If I had known, Dr. Rodriguez, cut her off. That's exactly the problem. Janet, your treatment of patients shouldn't depend on who they're related to. Every person who walks through these doors deserves dignity and appropriate medical care regardless of their background or financial status. Dr. Rodriguez pulled out his phone and made a call. Dr. Patterson. This is Miguel. I need you to come to the emergency department immediately. We have a serious staff conduct issue that requires immediate attention. He hung up and looked back at Janet. You'll be suspended pending a full investigation into tonight's events. Mrs. Whitmore tried one more time to defend her position. Dr. Rodriguez. Surely you understand that premium members should receive certain privileges. We pay extra for enhanced service. Dr. Rodriguez shook his head. Mrs. Whitmore. Premium service means comfortable amenities and personalized attention. It does not mean other patients suffer or receive delayed care for medical emergencies. Dr. Patterson. The hospital administrator arrived within minutes looking concerned and confused. Miguel. What's the situation? Dr. Rodriguez calmly explained the evening's events while Janet and Mrs. Whitmore stood by. Uncomfortably, Dr. Patterson's expression grew increasingly serious as he listened. Janet, you're suspended immediately pending a full review. Dr. Patterson announced this behavior is completely unacceptable and violates every principle this hospital stands for. He turned to Mrs. Whitmore. As for you, ma'am, your family's membership will be reviewed by our ethics board. Mrs. Whitmore gasped. You can't be serious over this minor misunderstanding. Dr. Rodriguez stepped closer. Mrs. Whitmore, suggesting that sick people should be removed from a hospital because of their perceived economic status is not a minor misunderstanding. It's a fundamental failure of human compassion. Just then, Dr. Chen emerged from the surgical preparation area. Dr. Rodriguez, Diego is ready for surgery. The appendectomy should take about an hour, and we expect a full recovery. Dr. Rodriguez nodded gratefully. Thank you, Sarah. Please keep me updated. Maya appeared from the preparation area where she had been staying with Diego until the last moment. Dad, Diego wanted me to tell you he's not scared because he knows you'll make sure he gets the best care. Dr. Rodriguez hugged his daughter. He's going to be fine. Maya and I want you to know that what happened tonight will never happen again in this hospital. As Diego was taken into surgery, Dr. Rodriguez sat with Maya in the family waiting area. Maya, I want you to understand something important. You advocated for your brother with knowledge, compassion, and determination tonight. Those are the qualities that will make you an excellent doctor someday. Maya looked at her father with admiration and curiosity. Dad, I had no idea you were so important here. I knew you were a surgeon, but chief of surgery and board member, why didn't you ever tell us? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Because I wanted you and wanted you, Diego, to develop your own sense of worth and work ethic. I didn't want you to rely on my position or feel entitled to special treatment, but tonight was different. Maya observed. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Tonight my children faced discrimination and potentially life-threatening delays in medical care. That's when a father's protective instincts override everything else. Maya leaned against her father's shoulder. I'm glad you came, Dad, and I'm proud that you're fighting to make things better for other families too. 2 hours later, Dr. Chen emerged from surgery with good news. The appendectomy was successful. Diego's in recovery and should be ready to go home. Tomorrow the surgery went perfectly, and he'll make a full recovery. Dr. Rodriguez and Maya both sighed with relief. Next morning, as Diego was preparing for discharge, Dr. Patterson approached the family with an update. Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to inform you that Janet has been terminated for violations of our patient care standards. Additionally, We're implementing new training protocols to ensure this type of incident never occurs again. Dr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. What about Mrs. Whitmore? Dr. Patterson looked slightly uncomfortable. Her family's platinum membership has been revoked, and they've been asked to find medical care elsewhere. We cannot tolerate behavior that creates hostile environments for other patients. Maya was helping Diego get dressed when she asked Dad, "What's going to happen to make sure other families don't go through what we did?" Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Proudly at his daughter's concern for others, we're establishing a patient advocate program and mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all staff members. Additionally, we're creating a fund to help families who can't afford emergency care. Diego, now feeling much better thanks to the successful surgery, looked at his father with new understanding. Dad, I used to think you were just a surgeon, but you're really trying to change how healthcare works, aren't you? Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Healthcare should be about healing and helping people, not about creating barriers based on prejudice or economics. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Maya reflected on the events of the past 24 hours. You know what, Dad? This whole experience taught me something important about the kind of doctor I want to be. Dr. Rodriguez looked at his daughter expectantly. Want to be the kind of doctor who sees every patient as someone's beloved family member? Maya said thoughtfully. Whether they're wearing designer clothes or have holes in their shoes, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Dr. Rodriguez felt a surge of pride. Maya, that's exactly the kind of doctor this world needs. Diego added his own observation, and I learned that having knowledge and courage means nothing if you don't use it to help people. Maya could have just accepted how they treated us, but she kept fighting for what was right. Maya blushed at her brother's praise. I just did what anyone would do for their family. That's not true. Dr. Rodriguez corrected gently. Many people would have given up or accepted unfair treatment. You persisted because you knew Diego's life was more important than anyone's prejudices or protocols. Maya realized her father was right. She had found strength. She didn't know she possessed us. They walked through the hospital lobby. Maya noticed how different the staff's behavior was. Toward them now, everyone was polite and respectful, but she knew it shouldn't take her father's position to ensure basic human decency. Dad, promise me something, she said. Dr. Rodriguez looked at her. What's that, Maya? Promise me that the changes you're making will protect families who don't have a chief of surgery for a father. Dr. Rodriguez stopped walking and looked at his daughter with deep respect. Maya, that's exactly why these changes are so important, and yes, I promise you that every family will be treated with the same respect and urgency that medical situations deserve. Diego nodded in agreement. And maybe someday when Maya is a doctor, and I'm a famous musician, we can help create even more positive changes in healthcare. Dr. Rodriguez smiled at his children's optimism and determination. I have no doubt that you both will make significant contributions to making the world more just and compassionate as you. They reached the hospital exit. Maya turned back for one last look at St. Matthew's Medical Center. You know what, Dad? I'm actually grateful this happened. Both Dr. Rodriguez and Diego looked at her in surprise. How can you be grateful for such a terrible experience? Diego asked. Maya smiled because it showed me exactly what's wrong with healthcare and gave me the motivation to spend my career fixing it. If Diego and I can face this kind of discrimination and still fight for what's right, then we can help other families do the same. Dr. Rodriguez felt immense pride in his daughter's perspective. Plus, Diego added with a grin, it's a pretty amazing feeling to know that karma really does exist sometimes. The people who think they're better than everyone else get exactly what they deserve. Dr. Rodriguez laughed. That's true, son. But more importantly, you both learned that standing up for what's right is always worth the effort. 6 months later, Maya was volunteering in the newly established patient advocacy program at St. Matthew's, helping families navigate the healthcare system regardless of their economic status. Diego had fully recovered and was performing in a charity concert to raise funds for the hospital's emergency care assistance program. Dr. Rodriguez watched his children with immense pride as they used their experience to help others. Maya was now known throughout the hospital for her compassionate advocacy work, while Diego's fundraising concerts had helped dozens of families receive necessary medical care. The events of that October night had transformed not just the Rodriguez family, but the entire culture of St. Matthew's Medical Center. The staff now underwent regular training about unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity, while the patient advocacy program ensured that every family received equal treatment. Regardless of their background, Maya often reflected on how a night that began with discrimination and fear had ultimately led to positive changes that would help countless families for years to come. She learned that sometimes the worst experiences can become catalysts for the most meaningful improvements in our community. And story of Maya, Diego, and Dr. Rodriguez became a powerful reminder that healthcare should never be about who deserves treatment, but about the fundamental human right to receive care with dignity and respect when faced with prejudice and injustice. They chose to fight back not just for themselves, but for everyone who would come after them. What started as a medical emergency became a lesson in courage, advocacy, and the power of family love to overcome systemic barriers. Maya's dream of becoming a doctor was now fueled by a deeper understanding of how medicine can be a force for social justice, while Diego's recovery reminded everyone that every life has equal value regardless of economic status. 3 years after that transformative night at St. Matthew's Medical Center, Maya Rodriguez stood at the podium of the National Medical Student Association conference addressing hundreds of future doctors from across the country. Her speech, titled "Healthcare as a Human Right: Lessons from the Emergency Room," had become legendary in medical education circles. I stand before you today not just as a medical student, but as someone who learned firsthand that our medical system can either heal or harm, depending on the prejudices and assumptions we bring to our practice. Maya began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had turned personal trauma into professional purpose 3 years ago. My brother Diego and I experienced discrimination that could have cost him his life in the audience. Diego sat in the front row, beaming with pride at his sister's accomplishments. He had not only fully recovered from his appendectomy, but had gone on to establish a nonprofit organization called Harmonies for Health, which provided music therapy programs for underserved communities and hospitals across the Midwest. His near-death experience had taught him that healing came in many forms. Maya continued her speech. "The night that changed everything for my family began with a simple emergency room visit that turned into a lesson about power, privilege, and the responsibility we all have to ensure equitable healthcare." She paused, scanning the engaged faces in the audience. "But it also taught me that one person with courage and determination can challenge entire systems." Dr. Rodriguez watched from the back of the auditorium as his daughter commanded the attention of her peers. He had flown in specifically to hear Maya's speech and felt overwhelming pride as she shared their family story with such eloquence and purpose. The scared young woman who had once felt helpless in a hospital waiting room had transformed into a confident advocate for healthcare. Just after that night, St. Matthew's Medical Center implemented comprehensive changes that became a model for hospitals nationwide, Maya explained. But the real change happened within my own understanding of what it means to be a healer. The discrimination we faced ignited a passion for advocacy that now drives every aspect of my medical education. Maya's speech detailed the specific reforms that had emerged from their experience. The patient advocacy program that helped over 2,000 families navigate complex medical situations, while the Emergency Care Assistance Fund had provided critical support for uninsured and underinsured patients. The cultural sensitivity training had become mandatory for all staff members, creating a more inclusive environment for patients from diverse backgrounds. But perhaps the most important lesson, Maya emphasized, is that healthcare workers must examine their own biases and assumptions. Every patient who enters our doors deserves to be seen as a complete human being with dignity, worth, and the right to compassionate care. The audience erupted in sustained applause. During the question and answer session, a medical student from California asked Maya, "How did you maintain your faith in the medical profession after experiencing such blatant discrimination?" Maya smiled thoughtfully. "I realized that the problem wasn't medicine itself, but rather the human flaws that sometimes infiltrate medical practice. My goal is to be part of the solution." Another student from Texas inquired, "What advice do you have for future doctors who want to address healthcare inequities?" Maya responded, "Start by examining your own assumptions, then advocate for systemic changes in your institutions. And never forget that behind every patient is a family who loves them just as much as you love your own family members after the conference. Maya, Diego, Dr. Rodriguez gathered for dinner at a small restaurant near the convention center. The conversation naturally turned to their shared journey and how far they had all come since that frightening October night Diego had brought his guitar and softly played background music as they talked. You know what amazes me most about our story? Diego reflected is how something so terrible became the catalyst for so much positive change. Dr. Rodriguez nodded in agreement. That's often how justice works, son. The worst moments can become turning points if we have the courage to transform pain into purpose. Maya looked at both men with deep affection. I've been thinking about Mrs. Whitmore lately and wondering if she ever learned anything from what happened. Dr. Rodriguez smiled wryly, actually. I heard through colleagues that she wrote a letter to the hospital administration last year, apologizing for her behavior, apparently. Her own granddaughter experienced medical discrimination at another hospital, and it opened her eyes, really. Diego asked with surprise what happened to her. Dr. Rodriguez continued. Her granddaughter is dating someone from a different racial background, and they were treated poorly at an emergency room in another state. Mrs. Whitmore finally understood how discrimination feels when it affects someone you love. Maya found this revelation both satisfying and sad. It's unfortunate that it took her own family experiencing prejudice for her to develop empathy, but at least she eventually understood. Dr. Rodriguez agreed personal experience is often the most powerful teacher. The conversation shifted to Maya's upcoming residency applications and her goal of specializing in emergency medicine. I want to work in the same type of environment where our story began. She explained emergency rooms are where people are most vulnerable and where compassionate care can make the biggest difference. Diego had exciting news of his own to share. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia wants to expand our music therapy program. They've seen the research showing how music helps with pain management and emotional healing. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Your music is becoming medicine in its own way. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Maya reflected on how their family's bond had been strengthened by adversity, If someone had told me 3 years ago that Diego's appendicitis would lead to all of this, I never would have believed them. Diego laughed. Sometimes the worst nights lead to the best stories. Dr. Rodriguez looked at his children with immense pride. You've both taken a traumatic experience and used it to help others. That's the mark of true character, Maya. And Diego exchanged glances, understanding that their father's decision to keep his hospital position secret had been wisdom disguised as secrecy. Following week, Maya received notification that she had been accepted into the emergency medicine residency program at Johns Hopkins, one of the most competitive programs in the country. Her personal statement about healthcare equity and her experience at St. Matthew's had impressed the selection committee. Diego's music therapy program received a national award for innovation in healthcare, recognizing how his concerts and bedside performances had improved patient outcomes and reduced anxiety in hospital settings. His appendectomy scar had become a reminder not of trauma, but of transformation. Dr. Rodriguez continued his work at St. Matthew's, now serving as the hospital's director of healthcare equity. In addition to his surgical duties, the position had been created specifically to ensure that the changes implemented after Maya and Diego's experience would be sustained and expanded. The former receptionist, who had been terminated, had used the experience as a wake-up call about her own prejudices. She enrolled in cultural competency courses and eventually found work at a community health center where she became known for her compassionate patient interaction. Story of the Rodriguez family spread throughout medical circles, becoming a case study in healthcare ethics courses and a cautionary tale about the dangers of unconscious bias. Their experience had been documented in medical journals and presented at conferences across the country. Maya often received emails from medical students and healthcare workers who had heard her speak or read about their story. Many shared their own experiences with discrimination and expressed gratitude for her advocacy work. Some described policy changes they had implemented at their own institutions. In particularly moving letter came from a nurse in rural Montana who wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to speak up when I saw a Native American patient being treated poorly in our emergency room. I advocated for him the way Maya advocated for Diego, and it led to important changes in our hospital's policies. These letters reminded Maya that their story had rippled far beyond their own family. Creating waves of positive change in healthcare settings across the nation, the personal had indeed become political. And their private trauma had contributed to public transformation as Maya prepared for her residency. She often thought about the eighth story aspect of their experience, how their family's tale of discrimination and redemption had become part of a larger narrative about healthcare justice and the ongoing struggle for equality in medical settings. Diego's music continued to heal and inspire, while Dr. Rodriguez's leadership helped ensure that future families would not face the discrimination that had once threatened his son's life. Their story had become a testament to the power of resilience, advocacy, and the unwavering bonds of family love 5 years after that pivotal night in the emergency room. The Rodriguez family gathered at St. Matthew's Medical Center for the dedication of the Maya Rodriguez Patient Advocacy Center, a wing of the hospital that had been renamed in honor of Maya's transformative impact on healthcare. Equitious Maya cut the ribbon surrounded by her family, colleagues, and dozens of families who had benefited from the advocacy programs. She reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a night of fear and discrimination had evolved into a lifetime commitment to ensuring healthcare justice for all's eighth story of their experience was still being written. With each patient who received compassionate care, each medical student who learned about bias, and each family who found help when they needed it most, their personal story had become part of the larger human story of progress, hope, and the ongoing fight for dignity and respect in healthcare. Diego played a special composition he had written for the occasion, a piece called Healing Harmony that captured both the pain of their original experience and the joy of the positive changes that had emerged from it. The music filled the hospital corridors, reaching patients, families, and staff members throughout the building. Rodriguez stood with tears in his eyes as he watched his children dedicate their lives to serving others. The scared young man who had once hidden his hospital position to teach his children humility now stood proudly as they used their platform to advocate for those without power or privilege. The impact of Maya and Diego's story continued to resonate throughout the medical community for years to come. Their experience became a cornerstone case study in medical schools across the nation, teaching future healthcare providers about the devastating effects of unconscious bias and the critical importance of equitable patient care. Years after that transformative night at St. Matthew's Medical Center, Dr. Maya Rodriguez had become one of the most respected emergency medicine physicians in the country. Her residency at Johns Hopkins had been followed by a prestigious fellowship in trauma surgery, and she now served as the director of emergency services at Chicago General Hospital, the same type of public hospital where families like hers often sought care when private institutions failed. The Maya's approach to emergency medicine was revolutionary. She implemented protocols that prioritized medical need over insurance status and created training programs that helped staff recognize and address their own biases. Every new employee at Chicago General underwent mandatory workshops on cultural competency and unconscious bias training that Maya had personally developed based on her family's experience. Diego had fulfilled his musical dreams in ways that exceeded even his own expectations. His nonprofit organization, Harmonies for Health, had grown into a national movement, providing music therapy programs in over 200 hospitals across the United States. His compositions, specifically designed for medical settings, had been scientifically proven to reduce patient anxiety and improve recovery times. His most famous piece, Healing Harmonies, was now played in hospital waiting rooms and recovery units nationwide. Rodriguez family's story had inspired documentary filmmakers to create a feature-length film titled The Eighth Hour, which chronicled their experience and its aftermath. The documentary won multiple awards at film festivals and was eventually picked up by a major streaming platform, reaching millions of viewers worldwide. The film sparked national conversations about healthcare inequality and led to policy changes in several states. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez had used his position and influence to create lasting change throughout the healthcare industry. He established the Rodriguez Foundation for Healthcare Equity, which provided grants to hospitals implementing bias reduction programs, and offered scholarships to medical students from underrepresented communities. The foundation also funded research into healthcare disparities and worked with policymakers to address systemic inequalities. Mrs. Whitmore's transformation had been perhaps the most surprising outcome of the entire ordeal. After her initial shame and anger subsided, she had gradually come to understand the profound impact of her behavior. She enrolled in diversity and inclusion workshops and eventually became an advocate for healthcare equity in her own community. She frequently spoke at conferences about her experience and how personal prejudices could literally cost lives. Janet, the former receptionist, had become a powerful voice for change in her new role at the community health center. She often shared her story with other healthcare workers, explaining how easy it was to let unconscious biases influence patient care. Her journey from perpetrator to advocate served as inspiration for others who recognized their own prejudicial behaviors and wanted to change. Night that had begun with Diego's medical emergency had ultimately saved thousands of lives by exposing and addressing systemic discrimination in healthcare. The patient advocacy program that emerged from their experience had helped over 10,000 families navigate complex medical situations, while the Emergency Care Assistance Fund had provided critical support for uninsured and underinsured patients throughout the region. Maya often reflected on how their personal trauma had become a catalyst for widespread social change. She frequently spoke at medical conferences, sharing the lesson that every healthcare provider needed to examine their own assumptions and biases. Her message was clear: behind every patient was a family who loved them just as much as healthcare workers loved their own families. Diego's music therapy programs had expanded beyond hospitals to include nursing homes, rehabilitation centers, and mental health facilities. His research had demonstrated that music could be as effective as medication in treating certain conditions, particularly anxiety and depression. His work had opened entirely new fields of study in therapeutic music and had influenced treatment protocols worldwide. The legacy of that October night extended far beyond the Rodriguez family. One of Maya's former patients, a young immigrant woman who had received compassionate care during a difficult pregnancy, went on to become a nurse practitioner herself. She credited Maya's advocacy and kindness with inspiring her career choice, and now worked in an underserved community providing care to families who might otherwise go without. Dr. Rodriguez's mentorship program had produced dozens of healthcare leaders from diverse backgrounds, many of whom now held senior positions in hospitals across the country. They carried forward his commitment to equitable care and continued to push for systemic changes in their own institutions. The ripple effects of his advocacy work continued to spread throughout the medical community. The story of discrimination and redemption at St. Matthews had become legendary in healthcare circles, but more importantly, it had become a roadmap for change. Hospitals nationwide had implemented similar patient advocacy programs, cultural sensitivity training, and bias reduction protocols. The Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations had even incorporated anti-discrimination standards into their hospital certification requirements. Maya's research into healthcare disparities had been published in numerous medical journals and had influenced policy at the federal level. Her work had contributed to new guidelines for emergency departments and had helped secure funding for bias reduction training programs in hospitals serving diverse communities. Her expertise was frequently sought by policymakers working on healthcare reform legislation. Diego's concerts for healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic had brought international attention to his work. His virtual performances for exhausted medical staff had provided much-needed emotional support during the most challenging period in modern healthcare history. His music had become a symbol of hope and healing during a time when the medical community faced unprecedented challenges. Transformation. St. Matthews Medical Center had been so complete that it was now considered a model institution for healthcare equity. The hospital regularly hosted delegations from other medical facilities, wanting to learn about their patient advocacy programs, bias reduction training, and inclusive care protocols. The very institution where Maya and Diego had faced discrimination had become a beacon of progressive healthcare practices. Maya's children, now attending the same elementary school where she had once struggled with the shame of discrimination were growing up in a world where their mother was recognized as a leader in healthcare. Equity, they understood from an early age that their family's experience had helped create positive change for countless others, and they carried forward the values of advocacy and social justice. Annual Maya Rodriguez Healthcare Equity Award had become one of the most prestigious honors in medicine, recognizing healthcare providers who demonstrated exceptional commitment to equitable patient care. Recipients of the award came from diverse backgrounds, but all shared Maya's dedication to ensuring that every patient received compassionate, respectful treatment, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or economic status. Diego's latest project involved partnering with medical schools to integrate music therapy training into standard curriculum. He believed that future doctors should understand the healing power of music and be able to incorporate therapeutic techniques into their practice. His vision was for every healthcare provider to have basic knowledge of how music could enhance patient care and recover. A story of Maya, Diego, and Dr. Rodriguez had demonstrated that individual acts of courage could create systemic change, but it had also shown that lasting transformation required sustained effort and ongoing vigilance against prejudice and discrimination. Their experience had become a reminder that the fight for healthcare equity was ongoing and required the commitment of every healthcare provider. Maya's emergency department had become a teaching hospital where medical students and residents learned not just clinical skills, but also cultural competency and patient advocacy. Her rounds included discussions about unconscious bias, social determinants of health, and the importance of treating every patient with dignity and respect. These future doctors carried these lessons into their own practices, creating an ever-widening circle of equitable. Carithi Rodriguez family's annual gathering had grown into a celebration attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by their story. Former patients, healthcare workers, policymakers, and advocates came together to share their own experiences and to renew their commitment to healthcare justice. These gatherings had become powerful reminders of the human connections that made their work meaningful. Diego's music had evolved to include compositions specifically designed for different medical situations, from calming pieces for pre-surgical anxiety to uplifting melodies for rehabilitation therapy. His research had shown that different musical elements could trigger specific physiological responses, making music a precise therapeutic tool rather than just background comfort. Documentary about their experience had inspired similar films about healthcare discrimination in other communities. These stories had collectively raised awareness about the pervasive nature of bias in medical settings and had provided templates for positive change. The entertainment industry had begun to take seriously its role in highlighting social justice issues, and promoting Equitemai's advocacy work had expanded internationally. As she consulted with healthcare systems in other countries facing similar challenges with discrimination and bias, her protocols for bias reduction and patient advocacy had been adapted for different cultural contexts and had helped improve healthcare equity in diverse settings around the world. Research foundation established in their honor had funded groundbreaking studies into the causes and effects of healthcare discrimination. These studies had provided evidence-based approaches to addressing bias and had influenced medical education curricula nationwide. The scientific community now had concrete data about the impact of discrimination on patient outcomes and health disparities. Dr. Rodriguez's retirement ceremony had been attended by thousands of healthcare workers whose careers he had influenced. His legacy lived on not just in the policies and programs he had created, but in the countless interactions between healthcare providers and patients that were now characterized by greater empathy, understanding, and respect. Maya's children had grown up hearing stories about their grandmother's courage in advocating for Uncle Diego. They understood that their family's experience had taught important lessons about standing up for what was right, even when facing powerful opposition. These lessons had shaped their own values and their understanding of social responsibility. Patient Advocacy Center, named in Maya's honor, had become a model for similar programs worldwide. The center provided not just assistance with navigation of complex medical systems, but also emotional support for families facing discrimination or bias. The advocates who worked there came from diverse backgrounds, and many had their own experiences with healthcare discrimination. Dago's music therapy certification program had trained thousands of healthcare workers in the therapeutic use of music. These certified practitioners worked in hospitals, clinics, rehabilitation centers, and long-term care facilities, bringing the healing power of music to patients in need. Their work had demonstrated that healthcare could be both scientifically rigorous and deeply compassionate story that had begun with a medical emergency and discrimination had ultimately become a testament to the power of resilience, advocacy, and family love to create lasting positive change in the world. Maya, Diego, and Dr. Ridge Rodriguez had shown that personal trauma could be transformed into public good and that individual courage could spark systemic transformation. Experience had proved that healthcare discrimination was not an inevitable part of medical care, but rather a problem that could be addressed through education. Awareness and commitment to change their story had become a powerful reminder that every person, regardless of background or circumstances, deserved to receive medical care with dignity, compassion, and respect. The eighth story of their journey continued to unfold with each patient who received equitable care, each healthcare worker who examined their own biases, and each family who found help when they needed it most. Their personal story had become part of the larger human story of progress, hope, and the ongoing fight for justice in healthcare. Maya often reminded her audiences during speaking engagements the work of creating healthcare equity was never finished. It required constant vigilance, ongoing education, an unwavering commitment to treating every patient as a beloved family member. Their story had shown that change was possible, but only through sustained effort and collective action. If you found this story compelling and inspiring, remember that healthcare discrimination continues to affect families and communities across the country and around the world, but also remember that each of us has the power to create positive change through courage, advocacy, an unwavering commitment to justice. Your support helps us share stories that illuminate these critical social issues and inspire action. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. Together we can continue writing better stories for healthcare, for justice, and for humanity. Thank you for watching and for being part of the solution to create a more equitable world for all.